Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 podcast. Welcome to October 2nd. Hard to believe it's already October with less than 3 months left in this 2024 season. I am your host, Stephen Nagishi, and as always, with me is my co-host and the associate editor of the sports blog, Awful Announcing, Mr. Ken Fang himself. Hi, Ken. How are you tonight?
How you doing, Steven? And good to be on with you again. And hope everything is okay with you.
Thank you. I got my Twitter/X account suspended, unfortunately, for saying something about something related to politics, which isn't a surprise these days. But anyway, I hope to have that account suspension removed within the next 5 more days to go. So in the meantime, I can still see the the tweets from other notable people, and as well as yours. And well, Ken, a lot happened this week in sports. Really, a lot of notable deaths happened this week in both Hollywood and also in the world of sports. We'll get to the sports side in a minute, but we lost really in such a short amount of period in the last 48 hours. Very, very famous actors and actresses as well. John Amos, who I think a lot of us will remember from Coming to America, the comedy with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall, among others.
Yep,
has passed away yesterday.
I also remember him from Good Times, playing the dad, Jay Walker, and Florida. I forget who played Florida at the time, but she was great. There was a spinoff of All in the Family in the 1960s. One of the very first sitcoms to show the true Black experience as a middle class income family in Detroit. Very, very good show. It gave Jimmy Walker a great meteoric rise because he said dynamite all the time. But John Amos was a great character actor, and as you mentioned, was in Coming to America, played in a lot of great things. But John Amos, he will be missed.
I will also add he was in The Roots as well, right?
He was in Roots also. Yes, he was also in Roots. The innovative 1977 miniseries that aired on ABC that was number one in the ratings for the week that it was on. He was just absolutely fantastic. He was a great actor. Played also was in a lot of Black experience movies in the 1970s as well. Truly one of the better actors that you'll ever find. And, very sorry to hear that he passed. Unfortunately, his family found out through the media that he died. That's a horrible way to find out. And very sad for him. And, excuse me, one of the better actors in our generation, Stephen.
Yeah. And then another notable death that hasn't really been talked much about. John Ashton, the actor who is known for his role in the Midnight Run, but also probably a lot of people will remember him as the very uptight detective in the Beverly Hills Cop series. He was in the latest one that was on Netflix back in July. I think that was his last appearance. I remember his banter with Eddie Murphy back in the Beverly Hills Cop days. That was a really, really fun movie. He certainly made his run as a kind of like a support role type of movie. I think his career is not really talked much about, unfortunately. That was like the very first death I found out over the weekend. John Ashton. Yeah, that was like the very first one.
Judge Reinhold tweeted about that. Of course, if you remember Judge Reinhold, he also appeared in Beverly Hills Cop as Ashton's partner in Beverly Hills Cop, and he was also in the sequel as well on Netflix. Yeah. And also, Ashton played. He always seemed to play dads. he played dads and cops. He was very good at it. So I think he was also in Some Kind of Wonderful as well. So he was a great actor, a person who could just character actors, Stephen, can act not only just physical, but they can
Yeah.
also act with the emotion. And a lot of people say a good actor can act with his face, and he could just give a look, and you know what his character was thinking. So John Ashton, John Imus, both fantastic actors in that way, and they'll be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. The other notable death, of course, is the country music singer and actor Chris Christopherson passed away. I think the very next day. It was, a kind of a shocking death as well. Like all of a sudden, celebrities dying in such a short period of time. Obviously, his the very notable one recently was his tiff with another country singer over politics, if you will. I forgot the name. I think the country singer also passed away not too long ago. Ken, maybe you could help me out on this one.
I know who you're talking about. That person, he's still alive. But Chris Christopherson,
Uh-huh.
one of those. He's a guy who was a Rhodes Scholar. He was in the military, Stephen.
Yeah.
One of those
Oh,
people.
Toby Keith. I apologize. It was Toby
Yeah,
Keith who he had
I
a
was going
beef
to say
with.
Toby Keith. Yeah, he got into a tiff with Toby Keith, and it was one of those situations where. And by the way, I want to let you know that Kansas City has advanced to the American League Championship Series, no Division Series. They'll be taking on the New York
Yes.
Yankees. They swept the Baltimore Orioles. They just beat the Orioles 2-1. Orioles have now lost 10 straight postseason games dating back to the last decade. But anyway, just wanted to say Chris Christopherson, a great singer, a great actor, played opposite Barbara Streisand in A Star Is Born, a movie that has been remade many times. Of course, the most recent remake was with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, but the one with Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson was very iconic in the 1976. It was his first, I think that was his first or second movie role, Stephen. And Chris Christopherson also became a great character actor as well. A guy who could, show emotion with the best of them. He was a really fantastic, singer. Wrote the great "Me and Bobby McGee," which was sang by Janis Joplin, a very classic song. There were so many songs he wrote that he didn't necessarily sing, and he had a great career. So again, a person who could do many multiple things, a Renaissance man. You wouldn't, if you met him, you wouldn't even know that he was a Rhodes Scholar, Stephen. He was very humble, and he and Willie Nelson were known to go on pot benders many times. They smoked pot together. Chris, he was one of a kind. Definitely, we won't have a guy like Chris Christopherson ever again. And it's too sad. Read his stories, read his confrontation with Toby Keith. I think that pretty much says it all.
I hope that's the notable celebrity death that I think we have kind of touched on. So I hope I'm done talking about it, because it kind of saddens the mood, especially as we head toward the end of the year. All right, as Ken posted there, we had notable death in sports world as well. First and foremost, Pete Rose has passed away at the age of 83, and a man with one of the greatest baseball players of all time. And yet he is overshadowed by baseball gambling that got him into trouble and ultimately led to him being banned forever by then Commissioner Bart Giamatti in the late 80s. I remember when I first moved to the United States, living in SoCal, that was like the big topic of discussion, being Pete Rose getting banned from baseball. And after his baseball career, was officially over, he had a radio show. He lived in Las Vegas, made money signing autographs, etc. And then he kind of made a late comeback in the mid 2010s when he kind of became a studio host on Fox Sports. That was with Alex Rodriguez and Frank Thomas, back in the day. And then he lost that job again because when he became embroiled in the sexual, harassment charges, you know, he was he was obviously an icon in baseball, but ultimately he was kind of let down by the baseball itself.
I disagree with that.
Oh, really? Well, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to be sympathetic to Pete Rose in any shape or form. He did it himself. But there are certain people who thinks that, there's a way that, he certainly have been kind of let down, unfortunately, with the baseball situation because of all the, stuff that, he did it, obviously, but he tried to, reconcile with his past, but obviously it really never, for me, I don't think he was never able to outrun the shadows of his past, in my opinion. What do you think, Ken?
Well, Stephen, here's a guy that I grew up watching all the time. He seemed to be on the baseball game of the week on NBC on Saturdays.
Big Red Machine,
the Big Red Machine beat my Red Sox in probably one of the greatest World Series ever in 1975. That won 7 games. 5 games were in prime time. First time that the World Series was proven that it could be a draw in prime time. Game 6, Carlton Fisk hitting the ball off the pole in left field. A great World Series. Pete Rose, however, was one of the X factors in that. Of course, he had a big controversial interference call. No, that was Ed Armbrister. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. It wasn't him. But Pete Rose was very controversial. Of course, there was a 1970 All-Star game, which he ran into catcher Ray Fosse, then of the Cleveland. I think it was was he with Cleveland then or with the Oakland A's? But anyway, he ran into Ray Fosse.
I think was with maybe Cleveland back then.
Yeah, he broke his shoulder. He broke Ray Fosse's shoulder, and Fosse was never the same as a catcher after that. But many people thought, well, hey, it's an exhibition game. Why are you doing that? And in the 10th inning to win a baseball game, what was basically known as an exhibition. But Rose said, look, I don't care what it is. I'm trying to win the game. And while it was controversial, it endeared him to a lot of fans who liked the way that he was always trying to win the game. He actually found out, and he researched this himself. He said that he had won more games than what Joe DiMaggio had played in his career. That's something that he was very proud to tell everybody. Won 3 World Series back-to-back with the back-to-back with the Cincinnati Reds in 1975 and 1976. His move to Philadelphia in a free agent move that Cincinnati didn't sign him. A lot of teams tried. I think 14 teams tried to sign him, but eventually he went to Philadelphia. His first year with the Phillies, won a World Series in 1980. Went to another World Series with the Phillies in 1983, which they lost to the Baltimore Orioles. I don't think he ever got back to that ever since. But he played in Montreal and then went back to Cincinnati, became the all-time hit king, a record that he still holds today over Ty Cobb, over 4,000 hits, Stephen. A guy who never hit more than 150 home runs, known as a singles hitter, but and played 5 different positions, whether he played left field, whether he played shortstop, whether he played third base. When he went to Philadelphia, he went to first place because Mike Schmidt was there. Great player. And had we just retired, and on that alone, he would have been a sure first ballot Hall of Famer. But the gambling situation when he was a manager with the Cincinnati Reds, Stephen, betting on his own team, at first lied about it, saying that he didn't do it, despite the evidence against him. Despite the fact that the report against him was all there, and Rose kept saying that everything was not true. But then when he wrote a book, he basically apologized. But when he did his book tour, he didn't seem contrite. He didn't seem like, America is a forgiving society. But when you do a book tour and using that book tour to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, America." It rings hollow. It seems like you're trying to make a buck. And every year he would go to Cooperstown during the Hall of Fame ceremonies and hold autograph signings, which took away from the Hall of Fame ceremonies. And that rubbed baseball the wrong way too. Had Pete Rose, in his own volition, said, "Look, I'm really sorry," also made a tour of the minor leagues on his own dime and said, "Hey, look, don't be like me. Look what I lost. I'm not in the Hall of Fame anymore." If he'd done that for like 5 years and shown contrition, shown regret, shown remorse, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. I really do believe that. But I really think now that the fact that the Hall of Fame never let him in while he was alive, I think it'd be hypocritical now to let him in. I don't think he's ever going to get in. But don't forget this, Stephen. A lot of Pete Rose's artifacts are in the Hall of Fame. His bats, his uniforms, his gloves, his caps, they're all there. You can't tell the story of baseball without Pete Rose. He just doesn't have a plaque. And I think that's what he deserves because, and as Johnny Bench said eloquently yesterday on Dan Patrick, it's the rule is right there, posted on the wall of every locker room, Stephen. It's Rule 21. You don't bet on baseball. And now I know, yes, there's DraftKings, and I know that there's all these gambling sites that are with baseball now, but that's for fans. It's not for players. When you have a situation, if players are trying to influence the game through gambling, then you lose pretty much the credibility of the sport. So it's very much it's pretty much sacrosanct. You don't bet on baseball. Pete Rose did that as a manager, and he tried to influence the game by making moves. And yes, it shouldn't take away from his playing days. No, but at the same time, at this point, you can't take back what's has already happened. And Pete Rose, I don't believe will ever get in the Hall of Fame.
And I know there have been talks about whether he should get into the Hall of Fame, kind of out of a sympathy, but I don't think he deserves to go in. And if the baseball is adamant about sending a message or sending a strict guidelines or ruling, Pete Rose has always been kind of like a poster child for for the baseball to be very, very stern about not just gambling itself, but if you think about it, we still don't have anybody who is accused of using steroids or PEDs in the Hall of Fame at all. None of it. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Alex Rodriguez, Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro, and even Andy Pettitte. Despite their brilliance, none of them will ever likely to see themselves in the Hall of Fame. And Pete Rose, there is obviously a bit of a sympathy, but I don't think you should put in people like Pete Rose in injunction with the sympathy just because of his passing. So, and I totally agree. I don't think people like Rose and others who have been committed, who has been accused of cheating and gambling on the game itself, always should have their integrities questioned. And then obviously they did it to themselves. You mentioned, Shoeless Joe Jackson is still not in the Hall of Fame because of the Black Sox scandal. I mean, is it really, really worth it? I don't think so. Maybe, the record for most hits in a game, or at least the hits in a season, in an entire career, will probably never be broken. And he will always have that record all by himself, even after humorously. But I think there was always going to be asterisks, unfortunately, attached to people like Pete Rose and those who are accused of using PEDs and steroids, who will never see their day in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. So, I think this is a lesson for all of us. Not just those who play sports, but even as us Joe Schmoes, especially as you mentioned, with so many gambling sites and gambling commercials all over television now. It's easy to get caught up and get emotional about it. We have players in football, baseball, at least in football, more or less, have been caught gambling football games. at the team facility and getting lengthy suspensions and so forth. So, I hope that this is a lesson for everybody involved, especially now in the day of, the day and age of sports gambling being legalized, Ken.
Yeah, and like I said, I know people think it's such hypocritical for baseball to be nowadays be associated with gambling, but again, that's for fans. It's not for players. It's for fans. It's for you, the fans that can bet on baseball. And while you can also talk about, and that's one thing that uh, baseball shied away from, and the NFL did as well. But let's face it. Now that sports gambling is legal, the sports leagues have embraced it, but they also make sure and also told all of their players you cannot bet on the sport that you're playing in, especially in games that you play in. I mean, we've seen this before in college basketball with Boston College. We've seen it in with New York University, and CCNY. We've also seen it, as I mentioned, the Black Sox scandal. Paul Hornig and was also suspended for gambling as well. So in the NFL, so these things aren't taken very lightly. So, and we've seen players suspended both in baseball and in football, as you mentioned, for gambling. So I know people say, "Oh well, why not let him in? Why not?" And Bob Costas says, "Let him in with the plaque and saying that what the reason was." I go, "Well, I don't agree with Costas on that one. I think that Pete, if you're going to keep Pete Rose out while he was alive, you got to keep him out while he's dead. And maybe it'll happen. Maybe 100 years from now. But I don't see it. I really don't think the Hall of Fame will be seen as hypocritical if they let Rose in posthumously.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete Rose died this week. He was 83 years old. And then the other another sport death is former NBA star DIkembe Mutombo, who died of a brain cancer this week at the age of 58. And here's a man who is the ultimate definition of an American dream. I apologize the police presence in my near my apartment complex for whatever reason.
It just happened last week.
Yeah, I know. It's I don't know. It's embarrassing. Sometimes it's police, sometimes it's an ambulance, mostly police. So I apologize there. But getting back to DIkembe Mutombo's story, here's a man who left Republic of Congo in African continent to come study medicine or become a doctor at Georgetown in Washington, D.C., where he was discovered by the late John Thompson, the legendary head coach of their basketball program, and was recruited on campus to play basketball. Was convinced that he could make money playing basketball, where he could use that money to help, fund building hospitals, schools, which he was able to do through his foundation in later life as a basketball star. And quite a story. He was drafted 5th overall by the Denver Nuggets, I think, back in 1991. I think he was 24 or 25 years old at the time. Very, very late bloomer. But he had a very, very tantalizing, skills, obviously, as a shot blocker. Really, just a tall presence. Kind of like, obviously, Manute Ball, but obviously had more defensive prowess and could rebound and obviously could hang underneath the rim, underneath the baskets for rebounds and stuff. Just a tremendous player, really fun individual, really started to blossom and people got to know him, obviously doing a lot of commercials and also in the, pop culture mainstream as well. Ken, do you have any memories or recollection of DIkembe Mutombo, back in the day when he was playing, back in the day?
Yeah, well, he played with a number of teams, Steven. His first, as you mentioned, was Denver Nuggets. And I think those of us who were big NBA fans back in the 90s remember that upset that the Denver Nuggets did over the Seattle Supersonics in the 1994 NBA playoffs, the first round, which is at that time was a best of 5 series.
Right.
Mutombo's presence, really beat up on Sean Kemp and the guys over, and George Karl, who was the coach of the Seattle Supersonics at the time. At the time, everyone was thinking, "Oh yeah, Seattle's going to get to the finals and take on the Chicago Bulls and see what happens." And then instead, they laid an egg in Game 5, and people remember.
That was like, I believe that was like the first time an AC defeated a number 1.
It was the very first time, exactly right. So the iconic moment of Mutombo lying on the floor with the basketball in tears, tears of joy, basically, with that series win. Of course, Denver lost a lot next series because, there was no emotion left by the Nuggets, but really, one of the great times in basketball. In addition to that, people have been showing over on social media the last few days of DIkembe Mutombo in an all-star game, chiding Michael Jordan that he had never blocked, that Jordan never dunked on him. Of course, you do that to Michael Jordan, he's going to find a way to get you. And later in the season, Jordan made sure he dunked on Mutombo. But it was a very fun thing because you could see the playfulness back and forth. They liked each other. Patrick Ewing was seen in that video laughing his ass off because he's like, I don't want to get involved. I've seen Michael Jordan dunk on me. I don't want to get involved in this. But he goes, don't poke the bear. You see DIkembe Mutombo, get Scotty in here. Ball boy, get Scotty. Show, we'll you never dunked on me, Michael Jordan. You're the greatest of all time, but you never dunked on me. And then, 2 months later, Jordan dunked on Mutombo. So it was very fun. But as you mentioned, Stephen, his philanthropic work, his later in life, first thing he did was when he retired, was build a hospital in his native Congo. And he was always going around the world and trying to help causes. That's the first thing he wanted to do, Stephen. He wanted to help. He really did. And it's tough to find people like that. And he's just a wonderful person. And, you think, and yes, he did those playful commercials for Geico and, playing on his finger wag and, no, and, doing that. And, he's had a great sense of humor. He did the Geico commercials for many years. And then when I heard about his passing yesterday, it was just shocking because you just don't think that a man like that would ever pass. You don't think he's going to die. And, and he died before Pete Rose did. And luckily, he got his own spotlight for several hours before Rose came and took it away. Unfortunately, it's kind of like when Farrah Fawcett died and then Michael Jackson died and everybody forgot about Farrah Fawcett. They died on the same day. So Mutombo should be remembered for some of the great things he did. I know Pete Rose is going to be remembered for the gambling and, and the very complex person that he was. But there's only one type of man that DIkembe Mutombo was, Stephen, and that was a man with a big heart.
Yeah. Obviously his numbers retired in both Denver and in Atlanta, where he later, left to join the Atlanta Hawks. And you will never find anybody with such a big heart and such a left an impression both on and off the field. DIkembe Mutombo dying of brain cancer, unfortunately, at the age of 58. All right, Ken, let's move on to the usual subject that we talk about. It is the NFL. We had the NFL Week 4, this past week, and I'm going to pull up the results of the obviously, we both have a different feelings about what happened, and unfortunately, well, let's start with your Cleveland Browns. I thought that this week, facing a team that was coming off another turmoil, that is the Las Vegas Raiders, with the Antonio Pierce comment about following the loss to the Carolina Panthers, the business decisions, and a team that is seems to be in turmoil, and we'll get to that in a little bit later, certainly. But give me your thoughts on this Browns Raiders game. you had a shot at the win, but tell me what were your thoughts on the aftermath of this game?
Steven, I said it last week. I do believe this team is going to go 1-16. I really have no hope for this team. As long as we have a quarterback in Deshaun Watson who just makes disastrous decisions out there, a guy who is unpopular in Cleveland, a man who is trying to find an excuse to get rid of, I have never seen an ownership that is really unsupportive of a quarterback that really just is hoping for another bad story so they can have an excuse to cut him. But this team had an actual chance to win this game, believe it or not. 2016, they had an opportunity to win at the end of the game, but Deshaun Watson has proven time and time again, with the Cleveland Browns at least, that he's going to find a way to lose the game, or the Cleveland Browns are going to find a way to lose it as well. They had an 80-yard touchdown that would have put them ahead 22-20, called back because of a holding penalty, and then they never really recovered from it. And that was just something that, again, it's typical Browns. It happens. This team, along with Kevin Stefanski, I mean, as much as I like the man, he has a great job in scripting the very first drive, and then after that, somehow everything falls apart. And you have a quarterback with Deshaun Watson who just doesn't seem to care. I think that both of them have to go, and I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think that the Haslams, who have shown that they have been nothing but disastrous ever since they have bought this Cleveland franchise, and the tone deaf way of running this franchise, whether it's bringing in Deshaun Watson or having a new project, a mixed use facility, and again trying to blackmail the city of Cleveland. I don't know what this franchise is doing. I really don't. It's spinning their wheels, and it's going to be a one. I really do believe it's going to be a 1-16 season, 1-16 season, Stephen. And I have no hope for this team.
Yeah, there was a controversial moment in the game where the touchdown to Amari Cooper got called off because of the holding penalty, and a lot of people thought that wasn't even a holding call at all. That kind of it was tough. Obviously a lot of the game momentum changes happen because of the botched calls by the refs or overlooked calls by the the refs as well. That really kind of unfortunately impacted the the Browns for the rest of the game. Certainly, the conversation is now starting to focus around whether the Amari Cooper should be traded, for a pick. Certainly the Chiefs could use another wide receiver in the light of Rashee Rice suffering a potential torn ACL, which obviously is painful and a long time to recover. Kevin Stefanski's job security more than likely will dominate the rest of the season moving forward. It is an unfortunately loss, and the one that they could have certainly easily win over a Raiders team that is in turmoil right now. So, the next week, we'll get to the next week's game in a little bit in our Week 5 preview. Now, as for my Chicago Bears, it was tough going up against the Los Angeles Rams that is very depleted with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both out. But I was still very much, wary facing the Rams because of the head coach, Sean McVay. Sean McVay versus Matt Eberflus was like a mismatch, and that was obviously being mentioned all over social media. And I was one of those people who were kind of worried because, the Bears had a really bad game against the Colts. A lot of people were pissed, and a lot of people were calling for Matt Eberflus's head. And, it was a mismatch that, even with the Rams, without their key starters, because of the coaching superiority, as well as the veteran presence of Matt Stafford, this was going to be a very, very difficult game. And sure enough, the Bears started off really, really rough around the edges on the offense once again. Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, had to be called out of sorts by some of the veterans this week, particularly Mercedes Lewis, a tight end who's played almost 19 years entering this year, saying that they wanted to be coached up and they're not afraid of taking criticisms or being called out. So obviously it's a weird conundrum because, the offense in the second half finally picked up. They went no huddle. Caleb looked really, really comfortable. The Bears scored 2 touchdowns and managed to, rely on their defense at the end of the ball game where Matthew Stafford was hit by Darrell Taylor, the pass rusher. That could have been easily called, a personal foul, helmet to helmet contact type of deal. But, the refs overlooked it. It was a, pick by Jaquan Brisker with less than a minute to seal the victory. Thank God, the Bears are 2-2 compared to where they were last year at this time, 0-4. A team that was in such a disarray. There was conflicting reports about, defensive coordinator Alan Williams being investigated by the FBI and all that kind of nonsense stuff, which later turned out to be true, thankfully. But it was nonetheless an embarrassment that the Chicago Bears were. And at least right now, they're respectable 2-2. They could have easily been 3-1, had they did a better job against the Indianapolis Colts the week before. But, certainly Matt Eberflus and even Shane Waldron, they're not out of the woods yet, even though they played a very good game. They called a very good game in spite of what they were dealing with. It's not the time for neither men to get comfortable because we have a game against Carolina that I thought that, we're actually going to beat the Bengals, but instead the Bengals ended up winning their very first game. And now Carolina's kind of, coming in, reeling, entering this contest in Chicago because they lost linebacker Shaq Thompson. So the important thing is I want to see some consistency. They were able to run the ball effectively with DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. Now they need to stick with it. I want to see some regularities in what they do. I don't want to see too many screen passes. That doesn't seem to work at all because our offensive line sucks and isn't, used to, going outside the zone and then just be able to block it out things. And, just stick with the, running the ball effectively. Let Caleb Williams, play under center, check downs, all that kind of stuff. At least, you're not throwing an interception. You're at least be able to say, as Mark Sanchez, who was doing the game on Fox, this one, give what the defense gives you. Even with the check downs, you're able to, dump the ball in front of you, whoever's available, and they were able to get the first downs and move the ball, move the chains. And, facing against a team like Carolina, they cannot underestimate any opponent at this stage in time moving forward. You have a chance to go 3-2 before they head to London to play Jacksonville Jaguars. So this is a very important test now. And I do hope that this is a sign that the Bears are maybe finally turning it around. Even with the offensive coordinator that is struggling and has his head being called so many times already. So, week 5, let's get right to it, Ken. I'm very, very excited and looking forward to what we have here. Oh, you know what? Let me start off with the week 4 reviews of a couple of, notable games last week. The Cowboys really struggled to beat the Giants on Thursday night. They still cannot run the ball. Now they lose 2 defensive starters, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. They're depleted as hell. Cowboys have a very tough schedule ahead of them. So, the Cowboys are in a bit of a trouble right now, in my opinion. And then the Falcons and the Saints, Asian kicker, Younghoe Koo, he came through with the biggest and longest field goal, I believe, in his career so far. he has, help. His legs certainly help Falcons stay in the ball game for his ability to kick long field goals. And this is the record now. So this is a very, very interesting, team. The Falcons are 2-2. Excuse me. Now the Saints, after 2-0 start, are 0-2 the last two. 2-2 now. So this is a division that I think a lot of people are maybe seeing that there aren't really good standout teams among the three. If you exclude Carolina, Saints, Falcons, and Tampa Bay Bucks. I think it's starting to shape up to be a 3-game dogfight, and the Falcons face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this Thursday night, tomorrow night for a critical in-division showdown as well. Couple of games. If you look at it, Ken, the Broncos beat the Jets 10-9.
Terrible game. That was a terrible game. I saw game. A lot of that. I was watching Red Zone because I had a rare Sunday off, and I have another one coming up this Sunday. Excuse me. Let me just say this: the Jets. I don't care who's quarterbacking them. They just somehow fall victim to the team that they should be beating. The Broncos didn't look very good. Bo Nix couldn't throw the ball in the ocean, but somehow they managed to score a touchdown after falling behind 6-0. Aaron Rodgers, this is the first time that he never had that. They didn't even have a touchdown play. He didn't come close to throwing a touchdown. The conditions at the MetLife Stadium
was miserable,
absolutely terrible. But the Jets just look lifeless. I don't think it looks like Rodgers doesn't seem to respect Robert Saleh, the coach of the Jets. And in the meantime, even though that the Denver doesn't look like anything to write home about, they somehow came up with a win. So Bo Nix somehow got the job done. He got a touchdown late. There was some questionable coaching once again. By Denver throwing the ball on third down, and actually not throwing the ball on third down, but a chance to run out the clock. But instead, on third down, let Bo Nix slide down for a loss, which led to a field goal, which would have been given insurance points to Denver, but instead it was missed, which allowed the Jets to come down, but they missed their field goal. So they ended up losing the game 10-9. Really I don't know why I know all this about the game, Steven. I really shouldn't. It was really one of the worst games I've seen in a series of bad games. There was a bad game on Monday night, which we'll talk about too. But really, I just it was just one of those games on Red Zone that really shouldn't have been showcased. They should have done the old WWF big red X on the screen to censor it to protect small children, Steven. That's how bad the game was. It was one of the worst games that really, but because it had a finish to the end, that was I won't even call it exciting finish. It was just one of those finishes that was mind-boggling at the end. And the Jets lost and the Broncos won, and it has New York Jets fans complaining once again that the same old Jets.
Yeah, there was a bit of a awkward exchange between Rodgers and the media member about the cadence. I know Robert Saleh said we should probably dial it back or something, but Rodgers didn't take it. Took some very exceptions and seemed very, very annoyed by it. And obviously, right now, there's probably a faction of the players who are siding with Robert Saleh versus, those who are, with Aaron Rodgers. And right now, it seems as though team is kind of divided and have to make a decision on, which side that they're representing, and it just becomes such a turmoil for a team that has yet to go to playoffs in a while, and they have also changed multiple coaches, added and left multiple players, etc., etc. This is a really difficult, situation for the Jets right now because a lot of their games are with the playoff, contenders from last year, as well as the ones who are competing for the playoffs now. Starting with the Minnesota Vikings this Sunday in London. of all places. So, it's an interesting challenge. We've seen a lot of crazy things happen in the NFL so far this year. There are no more winless teams. Obviously, with the Tennessee beating shorthanded Miami on a Monday night 2 nights ago. So, I don't know if there's a parody on it, but the Jets really, really need to step up and fulfill their potential. But somehow there's always the injuries and other personal stuff that's really, really dragging this Jets team. Ken.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's well. At least I know it's early. I mean, last season isn't a good example because he was hurt out from the first game on. Now he's trying to play, and it's been about 4 games. It's not a good sample size, but I know some of the New York media is already complaining that Aaron Rodgers isn't a good fit, and maybe he at the end of the season they'll be proven right. But at this time, he's got weapons to build on, like his former Green Bay teammate Alan Lazard. He also has plenty of weapons to throw to. They just don't have a running game at this point, Steven.
Yeah.
And right now, to me, the Jets, I don't want to say they're a broken team because it's way too early to call them that, but they certainly look like a team that is in disarray. And, I know winning fixes a lot of things. It's going to be a nice to mask things that are going wrong. But right now, the Jets need to figure it out, and they need to figure it out fast because I know right now that division is wide open. And if someone wants to take it, they can. Buffalo, with their loss this past week, they didn't show. Everyone thought that they were going to be world beaters, but instead they lost to Baltimore. They didn't look very good. Of course, you mentioned Miami. They're in disarray after Tua Tagovailoa's injury, and there's right now no quarterback. Tyreek Hill is complaining. You've got everybody complaining about that they can't get the ball and there's no one to throw it to them. So and of course the New England Patriots are the Patriots. They're not going to win anything. So right now, if the Jets can figure it out, they could actually win the division. But right now, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. And then finally, we will wrap it up with the Vikings squeezing by the Green Bay Packers, despite Jordan Love's sudden, if not hasty, move back into the lineup. The Vikings really jumped out to a massive lead before they let the Green Bay Packers creep in. And I know a lot of people are like, well, who are the Minnesota Vikings? And they're a very well-run organization. They have Sam Darnold, who is playing lights out, and I would say he is the MVP of this league right now, the way he is playing so far. But as a Bears fan, and then the Packers, I hate the Packers with all my heart. I think it's interesting what the Vikings are able to do. With journeyman Sam Darnold and the head coach entering his, third season, in terms of, play calling and everything. So I got to tell you, I have to probably give Vikings a much more, respect. I think the fans are needing to probably start to, maybe adjust their expectations toward Minnesota Vikings until they collapse, which they have done their share. There's no question about it. But I think the Minnesota Vikings are here to stay, and I don't think that they're going away. So it's going to be a very, very interesting. See how long can the Vikings actually keep this up? The last time they started at 4-0, it was back in 2016, and they sold that uniform, unfortunately. So. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. How far can Minnesota keep up, as they remain the one of few teams who are, still undefeated. So looking ahead to week 5, Ken, let me take a look at the week 5 schedule here as we pull up the scheduling sheet. I'm still stuck at the Vikings. Here we go. Let me see here. Week 5 schedule. My apologies here. So, the Falcons and the Bucks start Sunday Night Football. And then in the Jets Vikings, as I said, it's in early start at London, which is probably 2:30 or 3:30 around that time there as well. My Bears host the Panthers, while you know your Browns go to Washington, play the Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. That is
Yeah,
certainly
you can count that as a loss, Steven. I mean, Jaden Daniels is playing so well. You can just pretty much say that the Browns are going to lose that game. I will predict that right now that Daniels is going to run roughshod all over the Browns. I'll say that the Commanders win the game by a score of 30-0. And Myles Garrett again will be wasted. Another great effort. I don't see I can't really honestly see how the Browns can win that game. And the 1-16 journey will continue against the Commanders, and you can't really convince me otherwise that right now that my Browns could beat. I don't even think they would beat an SEC team right now. That's how bad they are.
Yeah, and then you see another game below the Browns Commanders, Colts facing the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Doug Peterson has put himself squarely on the shoulders of, in the crosshairs of the general manager Trent Baalke, who probably is thinking about, how they want to move on. So, maybe he survive another week. Doug Peterson, if the Jaguars put up a good fight against against the Colts, but I'm probably predicting that my Bears and the Jaguars play next Sunday in London, and if God forbid Jacksonville loses in an uninspiring manner, then I think Peterson gets fired as soon as the plane lands. It is such a life, when you're, such a life when the things are going very, very well. 2 years ago, when you went to the playoffs at 9-8 and went on to the AFC divisional round, but then since last year towards it, it's just a complete snowball for Jacksonville. I don't know which is better or which is worse between your Browns and the Jaguars, but I got to say this is another team that needs desperately to keep afloat. When your head coach is in hot seat, he's sounded like he threw players under the bus, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a crazy situation that he could be the very first head coach to be fired as soon as the plane touchdowns in the U.S. soil following their game against the Bears in London, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars. I know that the Khan family, they all said that this was going to be a big season for them.
Most talented team they put together. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and instead it looks as I talked about the Jets being in disarray, the Jaguars look more so. Trevor Lawrence looks lost out there. Doug Peterson is supposed to be a quarterback-friendly coach, but Trevor Lawrence looks like he has no idea what he's doing. Here's a guy who, of course, was a national champion at Clemson, and of course, did pretty well. They want a playoff game, Stephen, with Trevor Lawrence, but yet I don't know. He's regressed, and here's a guy. He's looking almost. I think Will Levis and him are in a neck-and-neck race for worst quarterback in the National Football League and one who makes worse decisions. Because Will Levis in Tennessee, I don't understand what he's doing out there it was very funny. Jason Kelsey actually called Will Levis the most exciting quarterback at the NFL because he has no idea what type of he was going to throw an interception or he's going to throw a touchdown. And it was very funny when he said that. But I'll be honest with you. Levis and Trevor Lawrence both make very bad decisions. They both seem to say, hey, there's an open area over there. Let me throw it there, and not realizing that they've been baited by a defensive back. And throw a pick. And plus Will Levis just flips the ball anywhere in the area and gets picked. And we saw that happen against the Bears. Yes. Touchdown. So I'm going to say this. Trevor Lawrence, I think he needs to be benched. I think he needs to be benched for a couple of weeks to sit down to learn what and I know the Jaguars are probably going to lose those games anyway. if you're going to lose, just go all out and lose, and bench your quarterback for a couple of games, have him learn a couple of things, because right now Trevor Lawrence doesn't look like a bona fide NFL quarterback. He doesn't even look like a national championship quarterback that he was at Clemson when he was in the ACC. He really looks like a Pop Warner kid out there just trying to throw the ball. And in the meantime, there's a group of hungry defensive linemen ready to beat him up. So I don't see any promise right now for Trevor Lawrence. And this is a guy who was thought to be the future of the league, but instead is right now looking like a guy who could easily be out of this league next year.
Yeah, that's you put it eloquently there, Ken. The Jaguars again. They face my Bears in Week 6. They call London their second home, certainly because they also own Fulham FC, which is a football club, as we call it here in America, soccer. He signed there, so it's going to be very, very interesting. With the game in London near, you don't want to get embarrassed in London. So, if they don't win, they're certainly out of it. So that's something to keep close eye on. With the situation with Doug Peterson and also with Trevor Lawrence and the players that they spend money and they're not getting anything. Any sort of productions or meaning out of it. So this is going to be very, very interesting with what they do moving forward as well. All right, well, Ken, listen, let's wrap it up with certainly some baseball related stories. You mentioned the Royals defeated the Baltimore Orioles to advance to the divisional round, where they faced the team that they're so familiar with, the Cleveland Guardians. And I believe that's the day. No, I'm sorry. I apologize. The Royals will now play the Yankees. My apologies. The Royals play the Yankees up in New York. That's going to be a very, very intriguing series. These two teams faced each other in the playoffs in the past, in the late 70s, and also, other days as well. The Yankees versus the Royals. I have no problem seeing the Yankees probably maybe sweep the series. Ken, what do you think of the Royals tonight and their prospect moving forward as they say and face the Bros?
Well, I am not a big Yankees fan, so I'm hoping for an upset here of the Royals defeating the Yankees. But here's a situation where the Major League Baseball would certainly love to them advance and take on the Dodgers in the World Series.
Yeah.
We saw this last year, Steven, when teams that were in the America had the bye were upset. It happened to the Dodgers. It happened to all the that had the bye. And we saw a World Series with the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks last season, which didn't excite anybody at all, even though it went to 6 games. I have to say that Major League Baseball is going to hope and hard that the Yankees advance, at least the Dodgers advance as well. You've got 2 big market teams there. You also have Fernando Tatis playing in San Diego, and they looked very good last night in winning their first game against Atlanta wild card series. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Really great stuff. You saw that, as you mentioned, in the other series as well.
The Tigers upset the Astros, yes.
Yeah. So the Astros are, here's a team that had great postseason success ever since coming into the American League. They won a couple of World Series. One of them was tainted, of course, with the cheating scandal. They did win one also with Dusty Baker. So here, a lot of people were thinking that this is a team that nobody wants to face, but instead Detroit swept them in the 2 games to none in the best of 3 wild card series. Now we have to wait on the Nationals. As the Kansas City upset Baltimore, and a lot of people were thinking that the Orioles were going to win. So we'll have to wait and see. And those were both road teams that have won that swept their series. So we'll see
Yes.
how what this leads now. We'll see if the Mets can win and San Diego can close out their series. We'll have to wait and see. The final weekend came down to some really exciting baseball, even down to Monday, which was a makeup doubleheader from 2 games in Atlanta. And the Mets in the first game went back and forth with the Braves. It looked like the Braves are going to win, then the Mets are going to win, and then the Mets finally won 8-7 on a ninth inning home run by Francisco Lindor. Great action. And then Atlanta won the nightcap, which basically took out the Arizona Diamondbacks, so they won't be able to defend their title. But based on that, what we saw last night, Stephen, is that Atlanta had no life against San Diego. We'll see if they can actually pick tonight in a great atmosphere at Petco Park. But and the Mets right now are leading the Milwaukee 3-1 in their game 2. So we'll have to wait and see. The last thing that the Major League Baseball won 4 sweeps in the wild card series. We'll have to wait and see if that happens. It could very well happen. We'll just have to wait. And because that would leave Thursday Night Football with no baseball games against it tomorrow. So we'll have to, and that would be, the NFL would love that. The NFL would absolutely love. They're actually rooting for the sweeps tonight. But if we can get at least a game 3 in the National League against, that would be fun. It will at least be a fun night for a sports fan.
Yeah, certainly, the best of 2 out of 3. Just like it's in the regular baseball regular season, kind of like an extended version of it. But yeah, certainly, living out here in Michigan, the Detroit Tigers country. It's hard to believe, the run that the Tigers have been on since early August, when they were 8 games under 500, and people were calling for the heads of AJ Hinch, the manager, as well as the team president, executive, Bob Harris, I believe, and now it's a nitty gritty right now. I do believe that there could be some sweeps tonight. Already, we've seen it. I think it's part of the momentum factor of it. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting what we see with the the wild card afterwards. The top seed teams are start to finally get into the action again after messing it for 3 weeks or something like that. So very, very interesting to watch the Tigers sweep the Astros, and now they go to Cleveland to face the Guardians, the team that they've faced so many times this year. So there is a familiarity. There's no question about it. I'm waiting to see just how far this Tigers team can go and how much of an impact they will have on this city emotionally, because you want players like that moving forward. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And we're going to wrap it up with something that, obviously, Ken, you're very, very close and near and dear to your heart. Certainly the last game, Joe Castiglione, who has been the long time Boston Red Sox radio announcer calling the games. Sunday was his very final game he has ever done. You live in the New England area, Ken. Obviously, it's the Red Sox country. Tell me more about Joe Castiglione and your early recollections, and how do you remember his career up there, with the Boston Red Sox?
Well, Castiglione came to New England. He had been calling games in Cleveland and Milwaukee before that, but he was calling them mostly on TV. He joined Ken Coleman, the legendary announcer who was well known in Boston, in 1983, replacing John Miller. As a matter of fact, Miller went to Baltimore to become their announcer, and Castiglione came in, very interesting, the very last year of Carl Yastrzemski. So he was there to cover all those games. He then, after Ken Coleman forced out of the booth, Bob Starr became his partner. But then in the late 90s, Bob Starr left, and Castiglione Castiglione became the main announcer. And aside for a couple of years when Dave O'Brien took over before he went to Nesson, forcing out Don Orsillo, Castiglione has been the main guy, and he's done it for 42 years. Lately, he's been cutting back his schedule. They brought in Sean McDonough to do some games on the radio on WEEI. His main partner has been Will Fleming. Castiglione called his final game on Sunday. It was a win over the Tampa Bay Rays. Right? Yeah, they beat them, leading to an 81-81 season. Here's the guy who was behind the mic for the 2004 World Series win, an absolutely one of the greatest stories in not only just baseball history, but in sports history, when the Red Sox came back from down 3-0 to the New York Yankees and winning 4 straight to sweep the Yankees and then winning the American League Championship Series. His call of "Can you believe it?" when Keith Foulke stabbed the ball off the bat of Edgar Renteria in the final out of the 2004 World Series will forever live in the memories of Red Sox fans worldwide. Red Sox Nation. He was behind the mic for the 2007 World Series, which the Red Sox swept Colorado. As I mentioned, he wasn't the main guy in 2013 when Dave O'Brien called the final out of the Detroit, the win over the St. Louis Cardinals, but he was there again in 2018 to call the final out when the Los Angeles Dodgers went down to the Boston Red Sox and Chris Sale closed out that World Series. So he's been there for thick and thin. There was a guy who you could tell in the early days when Joe was when the Red Sox weren't doing well, because his voice would be like, and the pitch 2-0, and you didn't know what score it was. You could tell the Red Sox were down, but when his voice was up, you can tell the Red Sox were doing well. And he basically, he wasn't a homer, but you just knew his emotions, and he called a good game. The booth, the Joe Castiglione booth in Fenway Park is named after him. He's going to be an ambassador for the Red Sox in coming years, but he's not going to be calling games anymore. He's going to be sorely missed, Stephen. Kind of similar to how Ron Santo was felt by Cubs fans, well known as an announcer, and unfortunately didn't get into the Hall of Fame until after he died. But Joe is a comfort. He was a comfort listening. He didn't have the best. He didn't have a Vince Scully voice or Mel Allen voice or anything like that. He had a higher pitched voice, but it was just very good comfort for Red Sox fans. 42 years, a great career. His son, Duke Castiglione, is a sports anchor at Channel 5 in Boston. The Castiglione family is well known in New England, whether they're originally from Connecticut. And Duke, as I mentioned, Duke Castiglione was a sports anchor for Fox 5 in New York and then moved back to Boston to be closer because Joe wanted to be closer to the grandchildren. So Duke moved up and became the sports director of WCVB. So, Joe is just well loved in New England. There's nobody. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. And I think that's one of the reasons why he retired. He was working so he can get to the Hall of Fame. Finally got that call last December. As a matter of fact, he told the story that when he got the call to the Hall of Fame, he didn't believe it. He hung up. And then they called him back and say, "Hey, Joe, can you believe it? You're in the Hall of Fame." And that's how he knew. So he's going to be missed. Unfortunately, we don't know who's going to be calling the games next season because even though Joe has said that he would like Will Fleming to replace him, the Red Sox and Odyssey, the radio company, which is formerly known as Entercom, has not made a decision. Sean McDonough jokingly said, "Oh, we hope to come back next year." But, Odyssey is one of those companies that's just cutthroat. They got rid of CBS in New York in favor of ESPN Radio to lease the frequency to ESPN Radio New York.
Okay.
So, hey, it's one of those things, Stephen. But great to see, Joe go out on his own terms. And we'll be missed by Red Sox fans.
Yeah, there's a lot of old school, announcers wear their emotions to their sleeves. If there's a saying, I believe. people like Joe Castiglione, you get emotionally attached because of your favorite team and the announcers that you grew up watching, or in this case, listening to. And yeah, I'm really really happy that people like Joe Castiglione doesn't wear out his welcome, because at some point, if you're a newbie, you know, you ask people or start asking questions about your work ethic and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a sad day for Red Sox Nation with Joe Castiglione retiring. They're still trying to figure out who the next color by color announcer for the Red Sox, and we'll definitely keep an eye out on who will be likely available. As you know, maybe not immediately, but I have a feeling they'll take a good look at who is available either after Christmas or maybe first week of January, so forth, just to make sure that they're alive and they have enough parts do the testing for me personally, moving forward. Ken, well, Ken, listen, let's put a wrap up on this show. Once again, thank you very much for watching us tonight. We have 213 people watching us on YouTube, and as well as maybe to your your ex. If you're joining us late tonight, my account unfortunately has been suspended for reasons unknown. But I just hope that you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you for following us on both X and also watching us on YouTube. As you can see there, youtube.com/@FangBites. It's similar to his X Twitter handle, but it is Fangs with an S at the end, bites.com for more more information there as well. On behalf of Ken Fang, I am Stephen Negishi. Thank you very much for watching us on this Wednesday night, first week of October. Please stay safe and stay warm as the weather turns cold. So good night, everybody, and we look forward to having you on our next broadcast. Ken, do you have any final words? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that thank you for watching us. You found us through my X account, Steven, as I mentioned. We don't know why he was suspended. We're not going to speculate. We're not going to say why, but if you know X, you probably know why, but we're not going to say why. But anyway, thank you for finding us, whether it was here or on YouTube. We will be back next week with another edition of the Double A team. We'll talk more about. We'll talk more about the NFL. We'll talk more about the
baseball playoffs too. We'll have a better picture.
And of course, anybody else who may have passed away, because this is the type of month of people are passing away. So unfortunately, that things are happening. But thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week here on the Double A team.